I never thought I would find myself in a situation like this. I had a wonderful wife, Emily, smart, beautiful, successful. We had been married for almost 15 years, and honestly, I thought our marriage was perfect. But over the years, something changed. Emily started spending more and more time at work. She was building her career, participating in charity projects, doing yoga with her friends, and I was left with scraps of her attention, a quick kiss in the morning, a tired glance over dinner, brief conversations before bed. I can't say I felt unhappy. More like, invisible. I kept myself busy, tried not to complain. Sometimes I told myself we were just going through a rough patch, that things would get better soon. But they didn't. We slept in the same bed, yet there was an emptiness between us. Emily was never a good homemaker. No, she was an incredible woman, smart, ambitious, successful. A true career-driven powerhouse, constantly involved in negotiations, organizing charity events, and attending high-profile social gatherings. Our house was more of a trophy to her than a cozy home. Spacious, stylish, filled with expensive furniture and adorned with modern art, it looked perfect on the surface, but behind that perfection hid chaos. Emily never enjoyed cooking. In the beginning of our relationship, she at least made an effort, tried baking muffins, experimented with pasta, but before long, we were either dining out or ordering takeout every night. She didn't know where the clean towels were kept, forgot to change the bed linens, and the only reason we ever had fresh toiletries was because I made sure to buy them. She simply didn't notice household problems. But what frustrated me the most was the mess. Our house was massive, and without upkeep, it quickly turned into a stylish landfill of expensive things scattered everywhere. Emily was always in a rush, leaving a trail of handbags, magazines, and heels tossed off at the door. In the living room, half-empty coffee cups sat abandoned on the table, scarves and coats were draped over chairs, and the kitchen was in a perpetual state of disorder because, as Emily put it, she couldn't waste time on such nonsense. I tried hinting that we needed help. "We can handle it ourselves," she would wave me off without even looking up from her laptop. But one day, after coming home from yet another conference, she found mold growing on forgotten food in the fridge, dusty shelves, and a wrinkled blouse I hadn't had time to wash before her important meeting. That was the breaking point. "That's it," she declared, scanning the chaos in the kitchen. "We're hiring a housekeeper." And just a few days later, Carla appeared in our home. Emily had been searching for a good housekeeper for a while, someone reliable, neat, and trustworthy. After a few failed attempts, she finally found the perfect candidate, a 24-year-old girl from Puerto Rico. "She's an absolute sweetheart," Emily said with a smile. "Quiet, humble, very hardworking. Our house is going to be spotless now." Carla really was exactly that. Slender, delicate, with long dark hair, she moved through the house gracefully, almost unnoticed. She never interrupted conversations, never imposed herself. She simply worked, cleaning, doing laundry, cooking, all with a quiet elegance. At first, I barely noticed her. But then, everything changed. Carla was one of those women who didn't attract attention with flashy beauty but with something elusive, almost magnetic. She wasn't overtly seductive, yet every movement, every glance carried a natural femininity. She was petite, slender, with a delicate figure that seemed designed to glide effortlessly through a home, remaining almost unnoticed. Her long dark hair was always tied back in a loose ponytail or braided into a thin plait, but whenever she let it down, it cascaded over her back in soft waves, carrying the faint scent of coconut and vanilla. Her eyes, they were special. Deep brown with golden flecks that shimmered when she laughed and turned almost black when she looked up from under her lashes, biting her lip ever so slightly. Her gaze was both innocent and enigmatic, as if she knew something no one else did. Carla rarely spoke first, but when addressed, she answered softly, her words drawn out ever so slightly, her Puerto Rican accent adding a warmth to her voice that was impossible to ignore. There was something soothing in the way she spoke, a southern warmth that made people lean in just to hear her better. She was born into a poor family in the suburbs of San Juan. Her mother was a laundress, her father a fisherman. From a young age, she learned the value of hard work. At 6, she helped her mother wash the clothes of wealthy tourists. At 10, she was already caring for her younger siblings. She understood early on that in this world, only those who could make themselves useful would survive. At 18, she left for the U.S. in search of a better life. She worked as a waitress, a nanny, cleaned houses. She never dreamed of riches or fame, all she wanted was stability. A safe, quiet place where she could finally exhale and say, "Here, I am home." And then, one day, she found herself in Emily in her husband's house. To them, she was just a housekeeper, tidy, efficient, unassuming. But she knew, men looked at her differently. Not because she was overly beautiful or provocative, but because there was a natural softness in her movements, a lulling tenderness in her voice, and a mysterious fire in her eyes that one could almost mistake for innocence, if not for that barely there smile on her lips. She was never a flirt. Never sought attention. But men always noticed her presence. I had never paid attention to housekeepers. To me, they were always just background figures, people who did their job and disappeared. But Carla was different. At first, I tried not to notice her. She moved so quietly through the house, almost like she wasn't there at all. But the moment my eyes accidentally landed on her, I found myself unable to look away. She was slender, almost delicate, yet her body had curves that were impossible to ignore. A narrow waist, the gentle slope of her hips, wrists so dainty that I sometimes thought I could wrap my fingers around them completely. But what drove me insane the most was the way she walked. Carla moved slowly, effortlessly, with a natural grace, even when she was just dusting the shelves or bending down to pick something up. When she turned her back to me, I couldn't help but stare at how her tight jeans hugged her firm, round ass, how the thin fabric of her t-shirt traced the subtle curve of her spine. I knew I shouldn't. But damn. Every time she passed by, she carried that warm, sweet scent, coconut and vanilla, mixed with the faintest trace of her own skin. That scent lingered in my mind, and even when she wasn't around, I could swear I still smelled it. But her eyes were what truly destroyed me. When she looked up at me, I never knew if she was doing it on purpose or if it was just my own twisted imagination. Sometimes she held my gaze just a little too long, sometimes she bit her lip ever so slightly, and it felt like there was something more there, something unspoken. There were moments when I sat on the couch with my laptop, pretending to work, but all I was really doing was watching her. Watching the way she tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, how she licked her lips before speaking, how she smoothed down her skirt even when there wasn't a single wrinkle on it. I knew this was dangerous. I knew that if I took even one step toward her, there would be no turning back. But even then, before the first touch, before the first glance that lingered a moment too long, I already knew, I wanted her. I wanted her in a way I hadn't wanted anyone in a long, long time. I had always considered myself a rational man. No, I wasn't a saint, but I had principles. I never bought into the ridiculous notion that a man just can't resist. Of course, he can. I had been with Emily for over 10 years, and even though the passion had faded long ago, I never once allowed myself to even think about cheating. But with Carla, it was different. I never planned anything. I never tried to see her as anything more than just a housekeeper. But the longer she stayed in our home, the harder it became to control myself. I was angry at myself. What the hell was wrong with me? I was a grown man, I had a wife, I had self-respect. I was never the kind of guy who chased after young girls, hiding behind cheap excuses. But this girl. Damn Carla with her shy smile, her soft voice, her movements so effortless, so unforced. She wasn't flirting. She wasn't batting her lashes at me. She wasn't doing anything that could be considered seduction. And that made me want her even more. I caught myself waiting for the moment she would walk into the room, finding any excuse to stay home longer if I knew she was working that day. Listening closely to the sound of her footsteps, the quiet way she hummed to herself while cleaning the kitchen. But I couldn't. I wasn't supposed to. Was it morality? Or just fear of the consequences? I didn't know. I only knew that if I crossed that line, there would be no turning back. I work from home. I always have. As a financial analyst, I'm not tied to an office. Every deal, every negotiation, handled through calls, emails, video conferences. It has its perks. I control my own schedule, don't waste hours commuting, and can fully concentrate. But it also has its downsides. I spend too much time alone in this house, where the silence is only broken by the occasional phone call or the quiet hum of the coffee machine. Emily worked late, sometimes even stayed overnight at hotels after corporate events. And I was left alone in a house that hadn't felt like home in a long time. That's how Carla became part of my daily life. I saw her more often than I saw my own wife. She arrived in the morning while I was drinking my coffee, greeted me softly, and went about her work. She cleaned, did laundry, cooked. We exchanged a few words, "Good morning, how are you?" And then each of us carried on with our day. That went on for about 2 weeks. Until one day, I walked into the kitchen and was instantly struck by a smell so rich, so warm, that I forgot whatever it was I had been thinking about. "What is that?" I asked, unable to hide my curiosity. Carla gave me a shy smile. "Arroz con pollo. Chicken with rice. My mother always made it on Sundays." She hadn't just cooked dinner for us. She had carefully packed several containers of food and placed them in the fridge, making sure there was enough for Emily and me for the next few days. I opened one of them, the scent of spices immediately hit me. It smelled like home. Like care. I picked up a fork but hesitated before taking a bite. Instead, I looked at Carla. "You haven't eaten yet, have you?" She hesitated. "I'll eat at home." "Sit down." She hesitated again but finally took a seat across from me. We ate in silence. I couldn't remember the last time someone had cooked for me with such warmth. Emily ordered the finest meals from restaurants, but they had no soul. And yet here, in this simple arroz con pollo, there was something real. I realized something. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel lonely. "This is incredible," I said, setting down my fork. Carla gave me that shy smile again. And that's when I knew this was how it all began. That evening, I hadn't planned anything special. Carla had cooked dinner again, this time, mofongo with fried plantains and shrimp. The house was filled with a rich, spicy aroma that made everything feel warm and inviting. Emily came home earlier than usual, which was rare in itself. She tossed her bag onto a chair, nodded at Carla, and didn't even bother taking off her coat. "What's for dinner?" she asked, opening the fridge. "Mofongo," Carla replied, wiping her hands with a towel. "Mofo what?" "A Puerto Rican dish." "Try it, you'll like it," Carla said with a small smile. All right." Emily shrugged, clearly indifferent. We sat down at the table. I looked at the two women sitting across from me and suddenly realized how different they were. Emily ate quickly, holding a fork in one hand and her phone in the other, scrolling through work documents. She absent-mindedly put bites of food into her mouth, barely registering the taste. Occasionally, she'd pause to check her notifications or reply to an email. Carla, on the other hand, ate slowly, savoring each bite. She sat with perfect posture, holding her fork delicately, as if there was something more to this meal than just eating. Every now and then, she'd glance up at me or at Emily, as if waiting for a reaction to her cooking. "It's delicious," I finally said. "Yeah, not bad," Emily added, not even looking up from her phone. I saw something flicker in Carla's eyes. Disappointment? Or maybe she was just used to her efforts going unnoticed? A strange feeling settled in my chest. I watched as Carla tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, her fingers lightly tracing the rim of her plate. There was something soft about her, something natural, effortless. Emily, meanwhile, kept typing away on her phone, completely detached from the moment. And I realized I couldn't take my eyes off Carla. Two women. Two worlds. I was sitting at the table with my wife, yet she felt like a stranger. And right next to her, just inches away, was someone who felt real. It happened completely by accident. I was working in my office, buried in yet another report, when I suddenly heard a loud crash from the kitchen. "Damn!" came Carla's muffled voice. I immediately got up and headed over. When I walked in, I saw an unexpected scene. Carla stood in the middle of the kitchen, looking down at the floor with a desperate expression. Around her feet were scattered shards of glass, and a thick red liquid was spreading across the tiles. "Are you hurt?" I asked, stepping closer. Carla shook her head. "No, just..." She glanced at the mess in frustration. "It was your favorite tomato sauce." I looked down. A jar of sauce, which she must have been taking out of the fridge, had shattered, splattering everywhere. "Well, that's not the worst thing that could have happened," I chuckled, but then I noticed that Carla was standing right in the middle of the sauce. Her sneakers were already stained bright red. "Don't move, or you'll spread it all over the floor," I said as I bent down to help clean up the mess. And that's when it happened. I reached for the paper towels at the same time Carla did. The next moment, I felt my hand cover hers. We froze. I looked at her. She looked at me. And then, bang! I shot my head up too quickly and slammed it into the open cabinet door. Carla gasped, and I groaned in pain. "Oh no! Are you okay?" She quickly stepped toward me, forgetting about the sauce puddle, and, of course, she slipped. I caught her just in time, but I lost my balance too. The next thing I knew, we were both sitting on the floor. I was covered in tomato sauce, Carla was practically on top of me, and we were staring at each other in shock. And then, she laughed. I couldn't help it, I started laughing too. It was the first time I'd seen Carla like this, free, laughing, completely unguarded. "Well, now you look like you just committed a murder," she said between giggles, eyeing my stained shirt and jeans. "Great. Let's just hope the cops don't drop by." I shook my head. We sat there for another minute before finally pulling ourselves together and cleaning up the kitchen and ourselves. But that moment, her laughter, her warmth, the way her hands slid off my shoulders as she stood up, that moment stuck with me. Because that's when I knew something had changed between us. It started as just a regular grocery run. Emily was stuck at work and asked me to pick up some groceries. I was about to go alone when Carla, putting dishes away, casually said, "I was just about to make a list. Want to go together?" I hesitated for a second, then shrugged. Why not? At first, everything was normal. We pushed the cart down the aisles, going over the shopping list. Okay, milk, eggs, bread. What's next? I glanced at the list on my phone. Avocados, Carla said. Why? Are you serious? They're healthy. I scoffed. Healthy doesn't mean tasty. Carla crossed her arms. You just don't know how to prepare them. Avocados don't need preparation. You just cut them open and eat them like baby food. She rolled her eyes and grabbed the ripest avocado from the shelf. All right, mister, I know nothing about food. I'll make you guacamole, and you'll regret going all these years without it. I smirked. Oh, so now you're threatening me with good food? Carla narrowed her eyes playfully. You have no idea what you're in for. We kept walking through the store, tossing sarcastic remarks at each other. When we reached the candy aisle, I casually threw a pack of chocolate cookies into the cart. Carla immediately pulled it out and put it back on the shelf. Didn't you say you were trying to eat healthy? I grabbed the cookies again and put them back in the cart. Exceptions can be made. She removed them again. I put them back. She squinted at me. You're not going to win. I leaned in closer and whispered. We'll see. She suddenly grabbed the cart and pushed it just out of my reach, flashing a triumphant smile. I laughed. All right, fine, you win. But just know, when I'm craving something sweet tonight, I'm blaming you. Carla tilted her head slightly, trying not to smile. Then maybe we should get some fruit. It's sweet too. Fruit is not dessert. But it's healthy. I rolled my eyes and tossed an apple into the cart. Here. Official compromise. At checkout, I handed Carla some cash. Here, you can pay since you're the responsible one. Oh, what a gentleman, she laughed, taking the money. As we walked out of the store, I realized I hadn't enjoyed a grocery run this much in a long time. We laughed, argued, teased each other. It all felt so easy and natural. And, honestly, it felt damn good. It happened unexpectedly. Just like everything between us. We were in the kitchen, making dinner. Well, Carla was cooking, and I was just teasing her about her methods. You chop onions like a surgeon, I smirked, watching her expertly slice the vegetables. And you talk too much, she shot back with a playful glance. I grabbed a wooden spoon and started tapping it against the edge of the pot like a drum. Hey, what's this concert about? Carla laughed. I'm setting the mood, I grinned. A soft Latin melody was playing in the background, something light and rhythmic. Do you even know how to dance? She suddenly asked, looking at me with a playful challenge. Do you? Instead of answering, Carla waved her hand gracefully through the air, then suddenly grabbed my hand. I'll teach you, her voice was teasing, but there was something else in her eyes. I let her pull me closer, and soon, our steps started following the rhythm of the music. At first, we were just laughing. I pretended to be clumsy, Carla kept correcting me, and we twirled around the kitchen, almost stepping on each other's feet. But then, something changed. At some point, her hand slid up my arm, her fingers gripped mine just a little tighter. I felt her warmth, her breath so close. You're not bad at this, she said, her lips slightly parted, her eyes shining. I looked at her, and just did it. I kissed her. A light, playful kiss, in sync with our joking banter. I wasn't sure how she would react. But when Carla froze for just a second, then smiled and leaned in closer, I knew there was no turning back. The next day, I decided to do something special for Carla. Nothing too over the top, of course, that wouldn't be our style. Everything between us was light, playful, natural. And then an idea hit me. When Carla came back from the market, a surprise was waiting for her on the kitchen table. What's this? She frowned at the sight of candles, a bottle of wine, and a plate of something unidentifiable. A gourmet dinner, courtesy of your personal chef, I announced proudly, folding my arms. Carla crossed hers. You cooked? Well, almost. What do you mean almost? These are frozen ravioli, but I boiled them myself. She laughed. Wow, what a hero. And the sauce? The sauce is from a jar. But I heated it up, so technically, I cooked that too. Carla shook her head, still smiling. And what's with all the romance? I shrugged. Well, after that dance yesterday, I figured you deserved a candlelit dinner. And you thought frozen ravioli was the perfect choice? You mean ravioli made with love? Carla burst out laughing. All right, let's try this masterpiece of yours. We sat down. She picked up a fork, dramatically stabbed a ravioli like she was about to taste a dish at a Michelin-star restaurant, and took a careful bite. I watched her reaction closely. Carla chewed slowly, furrowed her brows, and then said, Well, at least it won't kill me. You have no idea how much effort went into this culinary masterpiece. I rolled my eyes. She leaned in closer, her dark eyes sparkling in the candlelight. I never thought you could be this romantic. Only if it doesn't take more than 5 minutes of effort. She laughed again, but this time, there was something different in her expression. I reached for her hand, lazily tracing my finger along her palm. So, was the ravioli worth it? Carla tilted her head slightly. I'd say, yes. She smiled, and I knew this night was special. Even if it started with frozen ravioli. The next day, I knew I had to keep going. I liked seeing Carla laugh too much, and even more, I liked catching those glances of hers, the ones that hinted at something more than just playful banter. And then, I came up with a completely ridiculous idea. When Carla returned home from her walk, I was waiting at the door, wearing a black mask and a kitchen towel tied around my neck like a cape. Oh my God, what kind of circus is this? She burst out laughing at the sight of me. Shoo! This is a kidnapping. I stepped forward and gently grabbed her hand. You have no right to resist, señorita. Carla was trying hard to hold back her laughter. And where exactly are you kidnapping me to? I suddenly scooped her up in my arms. She let out a surprised squeal, but judging by her laughter, she wasn't against it. I carried her dramatically through the living room, humming some heroic tune. Help! Somebody! She called out theatrically. No one can hear you, my prisoner. Tonight, you will suffer from unbearable fun. I kicked open the living room door, revealing the surprise. The couch was covered in pillows and blankets, and right in front of the TV was a cozy basket filled with fuzzy socks, a soft throw, and a pair of toy handcuffs. Welcome to the prison of comfort, I announced grandly. Carla looked at the ridiculous setup, then back at me, and burst out laughing. You're insane. No, I'm a genius kidnapper. I set her down on the couch, playfully cuffed one of her wrists. I wasn't a maniac, after all, and then handed her the blanket. You are now a hostage of Netflix and relaxation. Choose a movie, or I will, and I warn you, it will be the most boring space documentary ever. Carla rolled her eyes, but was still smiling. All right, Mr. Kidnapper, but just so you know, I only watch romantic comedies. Oh, hell no! I have limits. We both laughed, and then, still smiling, Carla leaned her head against my shoulder. Fine, I'll agree to anything as long as you promise to never wear that mask again. I turned to her with a grin. But the mask is my signature look. Carla grabbed it off my head and pulled it over her own face. Now I'm the kidnapper. Well, you've already stolen my heart, I said in my best fake romantic voice. She rolled her eyes, but I still noticed the slight blush on her cheeks. It all started, as always, with a joke. Carla was cleaning the living room while I was working on my laptop. Or at least pretending to. In reality, I had been watching her for a good 10 minutes, how she moved around the room, effortlessly smoothing pillows, adjusting things on the shelves. I couldn't resist. "Carla, you do realize you're making things harder for yourself?" She turned to me, raising an eyebrow. "How exactly am I doing that?" I gestured toward the couch. "You arrange the pillows perfectly symmetrical every single time. And then I come in, sit down, and mess everything up. It's pointless." She scoffed. "Well, maybe you should sit properly and stop ruining my work." I smirked. "Or maybe you should just accept the challenge." She folded her arms. "What challenge?" "I sit down and do this." I dramatically leaned back, knocking a couple of perfectly arranged pillows onto the floor. "And you have to make me move so you can fix them." Carla shook her head, but I saw that flicker of mischief in her eyes. "All right," she grinned. "Consider yourself beaten." She stepped closer, sat on the edge of the couch, and reached for the pillow behind my back. I didn't move. She tried to pull it out carefully, but I leaned into it even more. "Oh, so you're going to resist?" Carla smirked. "Go on, try to make me get up," I grinned back. She grabbed the pillow and tried to yank it free, but I suddenly caught her wrists and pulled her toward me. She fell onto my chest, bursting into laughter. "You sneaky cheater." "Me? You're the one trying to take over my couch space." She tried to push herself up, but I wrapped an arm around her waist, holding her close. The laughter slowly faded. We froze. She was so close I could feel her warm breath against my skin. Her eyes, usually full of playful mischief, darkened with something else entirely. And that's when everything changed. I ran my fingers down her back, and she shivered. "You lost," I murmured. "Not so sure about that." Her voice was lower now, huskier. I didn't say anything else. I just leaned in and kissed her. It was easy, natural, like we had both been waiting for this moment from the start. Carla sighed softly against my lips, melting into me. And after that, well, let's just say the game quickly got out of control. After that night with Carla, everything changed. But not in the way I expected. I thought things would get complicated, that there would be tension, nervous glances, the constant fear of being caught. But instead, everything became perfect. Carla didn't make scenes, didn't ask questions, didn't demand confessions. She never asked me to choose, never reminded me that I had a wife. She was just there. Her behavior didn't change. During the day, she continued doing her job, cleaning, cooking, taking care of the house. And at night, she was mine. We understood each other without words. I didn't know if this was just a game for her or something more. Sometimes, I felt like she simply enjoyed the situation. After all, how often do you get the chance to be the mistress inside your rival's home, to receive stolen glances and secret kisses, to live a double life? But one night, as we lay in bed after yet another evening together, I couldn't hold back anymore. "Why do you stay quiet?" I asked, looking at her. She stretched lazily, her smooth skin glowing under the soft light of the nightstand. "About what?" "About us. About the fact that you could." "Tell Emily?" She smirked, cutting me off. I nodded. Carla turned onto her side and traced her fingers along my cheek. "And what would that give me?" I stayed silent. She sighed. "If I tell her, will you divorce her?" "No. You'd probably do everything you could to get rid of me." "If I tell her, will it make me feel better?" "No." "If I tell her, will it make me happier?" "No." She looked at me, serious now, without her usual playful smile. I stay quiet because it's better for me. I stared at her, realizing just how smart Carla really was. She wasn't the naive girl I had thought she was in the beginning. She understood everything perfectly. And that made her the perfect mistress. Carla didn't just become part of our home, she became its soul. At first, she simply did her job, but over time, it was like she blended into our lives. She was no longer just the housekeeper. She became a friend. And not just to me. Emily adored her. "I don't know what I'd do without you," she once told Carla, laughing, as Carla brought her coffee straight to bed. "Well, you'd probably survive on cereal for breakfast," Carla giggled. I laughed. It was true. Carla brought a sense of warmth and comfort to the house that had been missing. She played music while she cleaned, danced while doing the dishes, and sang while cooking. She was always laughing, always joking. Emily and Carla talked about everything: fashion, movies, weekend plans, random things I never paid attention to. They would go shopping together, discuss new restaurants, and even ask each other for advice on things I didn't understand. She's an absolute gem. Emily told me one night as we were getting ready for bed. I nodded, barely holding back a smirk. I knew exactly how much of a gem she was. Sometimes, the three of us would have dinner together, and I would watch them both. Two completely different women. Emily, composed, always perfectly put together, dressed in crisp blouses, planning her week down to the minute. And Carla, vibrant, full of life, laughing at the smallest things, effortlessly natural. I knew that getting too close was dangerous. But for some reason, I just couldn't stop. It happened on one of those nights when danger and desire intertwined into one. Carla and I couldn't resist again. Emily was home, but upstairs, taking a bath with music on, completely relaxed, confident that her husband and the housekeeper were just cleaning up after dinner. But we weren't cleaning. Carla was pressed against the kitchen counter, her breath ragged, and I, blinded by desire, couldn't stop. It was fast, hot, almost desperate. And then, "Michael?" Emily's voice rang out. She was right by the door. I froze. Carla froze. I heard her light footsteps on the hardwood floor. There was nowhere to go. Carla was half-dressed, her chest rising and falling rapidly, and I felt beads of sweat sliding down my back. "Are you here?" Emily stepped even closer. I grabbed the nearest towel and threw it over Carla, covering her partially exposed body. Yeah. My voice cracked, and I quickly cleared my throat. "I just spilled some wine, cleaning it up now." Carla, thank God, caught on fast. She picked up a rag and pretended to wipe the counter. Emily stood in the doorway, looking at us. "You two look weird," she said, narrowing her eyes suspiciously. I forced a chuckle. "Well, yeah, Carla just told me how she accidentally ate a cockroach as a kid." Carla played along immediately, pulling a disgusted face. "Ugh, don't remind me." She shuddered dramatically. "I can still taste it." Emily snorted, shook her head, and luckily turned around, heading back upstairs. I didn't breathe until her footsteps faded. Neither did Carla. Then she looked at me. We were one step away from death. I exhaled. And it was still worth it. She smiled and pulled me right back into her arms. Sometimes, lying next to Emily in bed or sitting across from Carla at the dinner table, I ask myself, why? Why does Carla act this way? Why does she stay silent? Any other woman would have either broken down by now or demanded more. Any other woman would have either fallen in love, insisted on a divorce, or simply exposed me. But Carla, she asks for nothing. She continues living as if everything is normal. As if this isn't an affair but some kind of game. What's in it for her? Is she waiting for something? Does she have her own secret agenda? Or, even worse, does Emily already know? Could this be some kind of trap? But whose? Carla's? Maybe she only pretends to be sweet and carefree, while in reality, she's just waiting for the perfect moment to turn my life upside down? Or Emily's? What if she's figured everything out long ago but is playing her own game? Maybe she's just waiting for the right moment to strike, to make me confess, to watch me crumble? And what if they both know? What if I'm not the player here, but the pawn? What if every smile, every glance, every lie isn't my victory, but part of their plan? I think I have everything under control, or maybe I just think I do. You know what's the funniest part? This story is still going on. Every evening, Emily, Carla, and I sit down for dinner. Everything is as usual. We chat, laugh, talk about the news, share stories. Emily thanks Carla for her care, for the delicious food, for making our home feel warm. She calls her our angel. I just smile in return. I got lucky. Carla is the perfect mistress. She doesn't ask for more, doesn't make demands, doesn't create illusions. She doesn't want to ruin what we have. She laughs at my wife's jokes and meets my gaze when Emily turns her back. Everything is perfect. But you know, sometimes, I feel uneasy. Sometimes, while sitting at the table, I catch Carla's eyes, and there's something different in them. Something I hadn't seen before. Maybe exhaustion? Maybe regret? Or fear? I don't know. But one thing I do know for sure, I haven't been caught. Or maybe I just haven't been caught yet.